she hit me, right across the face. Hard enough that I heard the crack of her hand connecting with my cheek before I even felt the pain. And she was smiling, actually smiling. Like hitting my face was the most satisfying thing she'd done all day. That's when I realized exactly what kind of person my daughter-in-law really was. And that's when I decided she was about to learn a very expensive lesson about picking fights with the wrong woman. I'm Patricia Morrison, and I'm 58 years old. And this is the story of how my daughter-in-law tried to destroy my son financially, tried to humiliate me publicly, and got absolutely destroyed in return because she didn't know who she was messing with. My son Michael is 32 years old. He's a good man, worked hard his entire life, built a career as an engineer, made decent money, owns a house, is financially responsible. Everything a mother could want for her son. Then he met Victoria, and everything changed. Victoria is 28, works as a receptionist at a dental office. She's beautiful in that obvious way. Long blonde hair, perfect makeup, designer clothes, the kind of woman who knows she's pretty and uses it as a weapon. Michael was smitten from day one. Couldn't see anything wrong with her. Couldn't see past the smile and the attention and the way she made him feel like he was the most important person in the world. I didn't trust her from the beginning. Call it mother's intuition or just experience with people, but something felt off. The way she talked about money. The way she looked at Michael's house like she was calculating its worth. The way she'd check her phone constantly when they were together. Like she was bored, like Michael wasn't enough to hold her attention. But Michael was in love, completely, blindly in love. He wouldn't hear any concerns about her. If I tried to say anything, he'd get defensive. Say I was being jealous. Say I didn't want him to be happy. Say I should accept Victoria because she made him happy. So I stopped saying anything. I smiled and played nice and hoped I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. Michael proposed after 6 months of dating. 6 months. I was shocked. That's not a lot of time to know someone. Not nearly enough time to know if they're trustworthy. But Michael was certain. Victoria was the one. He could feel it. They got married a year later, a big wedding. Her parents paid for most of it. They had money, showed it off. Made it very clear that their daughter was marrying down, that Michael was lucky to have Victoria, that he should be grateful. The wedding was beautiful but tense. I could feel the underlying current of resentment from Victoria's family toward Michael, like he'd somehow tricked their precious daughter into marrying him, like she was settling, like he wasn't good enough. And Victoria seemed to feed off that energy, played into it, made it clear that she agreed with her family's assessment. After the wedding, things got weird. Victoria spent money like it was going out of style. Designer purses, expensive shoes, jewelry, designer furniture for their house. Michael's paycheck could barely keep up with her spending. I tried not to say anything. Tried to stay out of it. But it was hard watching my son stress about money constantly. Then came the real problem. Victoria started flirting, not just flirting, having actual emotional affairs with other men. Michael knew. I knew. Everyone knew. But Victoria played it off. Said Michael was being paranoid. Said she was just being friendly. Said men and women could be friends without it meaning anything. But it meant something. Michael was miserable. Started working longer hours. Started drinking more. Started looking like a man who realized he'd made a terrible mistake but was too proud to admit it. After 2 years of marriage, Michael came to me. Looked broken, tired. Like the life had been sucked out of him. Mom, I think Victoria's been cheating on me. Like, actually cheating. I found texts, emails. She's been seeing someone else. Multiple people. My heart broke for him. But I wasn't surprised. I'd seen this coming from a mile away. What are you going to do? I don't know. I want to divorce her. But I'm scared she's going to take everything. The house, the money, everything. And that's when Victoria's true colors really showed. Because when Michael told her he wanted a divorce, She didn't cry, didn't beg him to reconsider, didn't try to save the marriage. She laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Good. I was getting bored with you anyway. And don't worry, I'm definitely going to take everything. My lawyers already drafted the paperwork. You're going to regret ever meeting me." She'd already prepared for this, already talked to a lawyer, already planned to bleed Michael dry. The whole marriage had been calculated. A con to get access to his money, to his house, to his life. The divorce got ugly fast. Victoria hired an aggressive attorney named Daniel Cross, a man who was known for being ruthless, for using every dirty trick in the book, for destroying men financially in divorce court. He filed papers claiming Victoria was a stay-at-home wife who'd sacrificed her career to support Michael, that she'd given up opportunities, that she deserved alimony, that she deserved the house, that she deserved half of everything. But Victoria had worked the whole time. She was still working. She hadn't sacrificed anything. It was all lies, but the lies were presented in legal language that made them sound plausible. The case went to court. Michael was stressed, terrified. Victoria sat there with this smug expression, like she'd already won, like she knew exactly how this was going to go. The judge listened to both sides. Victoria's lawyer painted Michael as a man who'd promised to support his wife. Victoria cried. She was so good at it, made it seem like she'd been wronged, like Michael had promised her the world and then abandoned her. Michael's attorney fought back, presented evidence that Victoria had worked the entire marriage, that she'd never been a stay-at-home wife, that she'd taken out credit cards in Michael's name without his permission, that she'd transferred money to her parents without his knowledge, that she was the one who'd betrayed the marriage. The judge listened, and then he ruled in Victoria's favor, said he was going to award her the house, said he was going to award her alimony, said Michael had to pay her $3,000 a month for the next 5 years. The decision was devastating. Michael was destroyed. Financially and emotionally, he lost everything. The house he'd worked for, the savings he'd built, his financial future, all gone, because Victoria had played the game better. But here's where the story gets interesting. Because Victoria got cocky, got confident that she'd won and would face no consequences. She walked out of the courthouse that day with this expression on her face. Victory written all over it. I was in the hallway, waiting for Michael. She saw me and something in her switched. Like she couldn't help herself, like she needed to gloat. She walked right up to me and said, "You should have taught your son how to be a real man. Maybe then I wouldn't have had to humiliate him in court." And then she did it. Pulled her hand back and smacked me right across the face. Not hard enough to cause serious injury, but hard enough to hurt. Hard enough to humiliate. Hard enough to show everyone in that courthouse hallway exactly how little respect she had for me, for my son, for anyone. I stood there shocked, my cheeks stinging. Security was looking over but not doing anything. It had happened so fast. And Victoria was walking away like she'd just accomplished something, like she'd made some kind of point. That's when I made a decision. That's when I decided Victoria was about to learn the most important lesson of her life, that you don't mess with a woman like me, that you don't hit someone in public and expect no consequences, that you don't destroy my son's life and walk away smiling. Here's what Victoria didn't know about me, what Michael hadn't told her, what nobody in that courtroom knew except Judge Harrison himself. I'm a judge, not just any judge. I'm Judge Patricia Morrison of the 5th District Family Court. I've been on the bench for 12 years. Before that, I was a family law attorney for 15 years. I know divorce law better than most people know their own names. I know every loophole, every precedent, every trick that lawyers use to manipulate the system, and I know exactly how to dismantle those tricks when I see them. The reason I wasn't sitting on the bench for Michael's case was simple: conflict of interest. I'd recused myself the moment Michael filed for divorce. had the case transferred to Judge Harrison's docket, followed every ethical guideline to the letter. I couldn't preside over my own son's divorce. That would be improper. But that didn't mean I couldn't help him. Didn't mean I couldn't use my knowledge to fight back. Didn't mean I was going to sit by and watch Victoria destroy my son with lies and manipulation. The slap changed everything. Because Victoria had just assaulted a sitting judge in a courthouse, on camera, with multiple witnesses. That wasn't just assault. That was a whole different level of stupid. I stood there in that hallway, my cheek burning, watching Victoria walk away with that satisfied smirk. And I smiled, actually smiled, because she'd just handed me everything I needed to destroy her. Michael rushed over. "Mom, are you okay?" "Did she just—" "I'm fine," I said. "Better than fine, actually. She just made the biggest mistake of her life." "What do you mean?" "Trust me. Just trust me on this." Security had finally mobilized. 2 officers approached me, asking if I wanted to file a report. I absolutely did. I gave my statement, pointed out the security cameras that had caught everything, identified Victoria, made it official. But that was just the beginning. That evening, I sat down with Michael in my home office, spread out all the documents from his divorce case, started going through everything with a fine-tooth comb. "Tell me everything," I said. "Every financial transaction during the marriage, every credit card, every bank account, every purchase, everything Victoria did with money." Michael looked exhausted. "Mom, we already went over this in court." Her lawyer explained it all away. Her lawyer lied, and Judge Harrison bought it because the evidence wasn't presented properly. But we're going to fix that. I spent the next 3 days doing what I do best, investigating financial fraud. I requested bank records, credit card statements, transaction histories. Michael gave me access to everything, and what I found was even worse than I'd expected. Victoria hadn't just taken out credit cards in Michael's name. She'd opened bank accounts. She'd applied for loans. She'd created an entire shadow financial system using Michael's identity and credit, and she'd been funneling money out of their joint accounts for over a year before filing for divorce. The total? Nearly $87,000. Not the $40,000 her lawyer had admitted to. Not even close. She'd been planning this divorce from almost the moment they got married. Every purchase, every transfer, every credit card was part of a calculated plan to drain Michael financially and then walk away with alimony and the house. It was fraud. Clear, documented, prosecutable fraud. I compiled everything into a comprehensive report, transaction by transaction, date by date. A complete financial timeline that showed exactly what Victoria had done. Then I did something I rarely do. I called in a favor. I contacted Margaret Chen, an attorney I'd known for 20 years. She specialized in complex divorce fraud cases. She was the best in the state, and she owed me a favor from a case years ago where I'd ruled in her client's favor despite enormous pressure to do otherwise. "Margaret, I need your help. My son's divorce was railroaded. His wife committed massive fraud, and her attorney covered it up. I have all the evidence. I need you to file a motion for reconsideration and tear this case apart." Margaret didn't hesitate. "Send me everything. I'll review it tonight." She called me back 3 hours later. "Patricia, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of divorce fraud I've ever seen. How did Judge Harrison miss this?" Her attorney buried it in paperwork and presented a false narrative. "Harrison's a good judge, but he's not a forensic accountant. He didn't see what was hidden." "Well, I see it, and I'm going to make sure everyone else sees it too. I'll have the motion filed by tomorrow morning." True to her word, Margaret filed a motion for reconsideration the next day. But she didn't just file a motion. She filed a comprehensive brief that laid out every single fraudulent transaction, every lie Victoria's attorney had told, every piece of evidence that had been hidden or misrepresented. And she requested an emergency hearing based on newly discovered evidence of fraud. Judge Harrison granted the hearing within a week, faster than normal, but the evidence was compelling enough that he couldn't ignore it. Victoria and her attorney, Daniel Cross, showed up to that hearing looking confident. They thought this was going to be a quick dismissal, a rubber stamp. They had no idea what was coming. Margaret started by presenting the financial timeline. Transaction by transaction, she walked through Victoria's fraud. The unauthorized credit cards, the secret bank accounts, the loans taken out in Michael's name, the systematic draining of their joint accounts. Daniel Cross tried to object, tried to claim the evidence was inadmissible, tried to say it was gathered improperly. But Margaret had done everything by the book. Every document was legally obtained. Every transaction was verified. There was no legal basis for exclusion. Then Margaret dropped the bomb. She presented email evidence. Emails Victoria had sent to her mother, planning the divorce. Emails from before the wedding, discussing how much she thought she could get from Michael. Emails talking about playing the long game and maximizing the payout. Victoria's face went white. She clearly thought those emails were deleted, thought they were gone forever. But nothing is ever really deleted, not if you know where to look. Judge Harrison's expression changed from interested to furious. He looked at Victoria with the kind of contempt judges reserve for people who've lied under oath. "Miss Morrison," he said, using her married name like a weapon, "did you testify in the original hearing that you had no knowledge of separate financial accounts?" Victoria looked at her attorney. Daniel whispered something to her. She nodded. "Miss Morrison, I asked you a question. I don't remember specifically what I said. Let me refresh your memory." Judge Harrison pulled out the transcript from the original hearing. "You testified, and I quote, 'I have no separate accounts. All our money was joint. I never hid anything from Michael.' Do you remember saying that?" Silence. "Miss Morrison, do you remember testifying under oath that you had no separate accounts?" Yes, I remember. And was that testimony truthful?" More silence. "Miss Morrison, I'm going to ask you again. Was that testimony truthful?" Daniel Cross stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to consult with my client." Denied. "Miss Morrison is going to answer my question. Was your testimony truthful?" Victoria looked trapped. If she said yes, she was admitting perjury because the evidence proved she'd lied. If she said no, she was admitting perjury because she'd lied under oath. She chose option 3. She started crying. Big, dramatic sobs. The same performance she'd used in the original hearing. But this time, Judge Harrison wasn't buying it. "Miss Morrison, your tears are not an answer to my question. I'm going to ask you one more time, and if you don't answer, I'm going to hold you in contempt. Was your previous testimony truthful?" Through her tears, Victoria whispered, "No." The courtroom went completely silent. "I'm sorry, Miss Morrison. I didn't hear that. Can you speak up?" "No," Victoria said louder. "No, it wasn't truthful." Judge Harrison leaned back in his chair. "So you're admitting that you committed perjury in my courtroom?" Daniel Cross tried to intervene. "Your Honor, my client is under extreme duress. Perhaps we should." "Mr. Cross, your client just admitted to perjury. I suggest you stop talking before you make things worse for her." Judge Harrison looked at the documents in front of him. Then he looked at Victoria. Then he looked at Michael. "I'm going to take a 15-minute recess. When I return, I'm going to issue a new ruling. And I'm going to recommend that the district attorney review this case for potential criminal charges." We reconvened 15 minutes later. Judge Harrison looked like he'd aged 10 years in that break. He hated being manipulated, hated being lied to, and Victoria had done both. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented today," he began, "and I'm deeply troubled by what I've seen. Miss Morrison committed systematic fraud against her husband. She lied under oath in this court. She manipulated the legal system for financial gain. And her attorney assisted her in presenting false testimony. Daniel Cross looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Therefore, I'm issuing the following rulings. First, I'm overturning my previous decision in its entirety. The house goes back to Mr. Morrison. The alimony is eliminated. Miss Morrison is entitled to nothing from this marriage because she entered it under fraudulent pretenses, Victoria gasped. Second, I'm ordering Miss Morrison to return all money fraudulently obtained during the marriage. Based on the evidence presented, that total is $87,000. She has 30 days to make full restitution or face additional penalties. Third, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. The evidence suggests Miss Morrison committed identity theft, fraud, and perjury. Those are serious crimes with serious consequences. Fourth, I'm sanctioning Mr. Cross for presenting false testimony to this court. The Bar Association will receive a full report of his conduct in this case. Daniel Cross started to object, but Judge Harrison cut him off. Mr. Cross, if you want to make things worse for yourself, please continue speaking. Otherwise, I suggest you sit down and accept that you're lucky I'm not recommending disbarment. Cross sat down. Finally, I'm issuing a restraining order. Miss Morrison is not to contact Mr. Morrison or any member of his family for any reason. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. He banged his gavel. This court is adjourned. Victory wasn't sweet. It was necessary. Justice wasn't satisfying. It was required. Watching Victoria's face crumble as she realized she'd lost everything wasn't enjoyable. It was appropriate. Michael and I walked out of that courtroom together. He looked stunned, like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Is it really over? He asked. Not quite, I said. The criminal case is still coming, but the divorce is over. You won. We won, he corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. That's what mothers do. We protect our children, no matter how old they get. But Victoria wasn't done. She still had that slap to answer for. 2 days after the hearing, I received a call from Detective Sarah Williams of the Courthouse Security Division. She'd reviewed the footage of Victoria hitting me. She'd taken statements from witnesses, and she wanted to know if I wanted to press charges. Absolutely, I said. Ma'am, I have to tell you, assault cases like this are often hard to prosecute. It was one slap. No serious injury. Most judges give probation for a first offense. I understand. But I still want to press charges. May I ask why? No judgment. I'm just curious. Because Victoria needs to learn that actions have consequences. She spent her entire adult life using her looks and her charm to get away with things. Someone needs to hold her accountable. Fair enough. I'll forward everything to the district attorney. The assault charge moved forward, but so did the fraud investigation. The district attorney assigned a prosecutor named James Monroe to Victoria's case. He was thorough, methodical, and he didn't miss details. He called me to get my statement about the assault, but he was more interested in the fraud. Judge Morrison, the financial evidence you compiled is extraordinary. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of identity theft and fraud I've seen in years. How did you find all this? I'm a family court judge. I've seen every trick in the book. I knew what to look for. Well, thanks to your work, we have enough to prosecute Miss Morrison on multiple felony counts, identity theft, fraud, perjury. She's looking at serious prison time if convicted. What about a plea deal? Oh, she'll get offered one. They always do. But even with a plea, she's going to serve time. The evidence is too strong to walk away from this. Victoria was arrested 3 weeks after the court hearing, charged with identity theft, wire fraud, perjury, and assault. Her bail was set at $50,000. Her parents posted it, but they weren't happy about it. I heard through the courthouse grapevine that Victoria's father had finally seen through her act, had finally realized his daughter wasn't the victim. she'd always claimed to be. That she was a con artist who'd been playing everyone for years. The criminal trial moved faster than I expected. Victoria's new attorney, Daniel Cross, had dropped her as a client after the bar filed an ethics complaint against him, tried to negotiate a plea deal. James Monroe offered her a deal. Plead guilty to fraud and identity theft, serve 18 months in prison, pay full restitution, and the other charges would be dropped. If she went to trial and lost, she was looking at 5 to 7 years. Victoria took the deal. She didn't have a choice. The evidence was overwhelming. 57 separate fraudulent transactions. Emails proving premeditation. Testimony from Michael about unauthorized accounts. Her own admission of perjury in Judge Harrison's courtroom. She pleaded guilty on a Wednesday morning. I wasn't in the courtroom, I didn't need to be. But Michael was. He wanted to see it, wanted to hear her admit what she'd done. He called me, right after. She did it, Mom. She pleaded guilty. It's really over. How do you feel? Relieved, vindicated, angry that it took this long, but mostly relieved. Victoria was sentenced 2 weeks later. The judge, not Judge Harrison, a different judge for the criminal case, gave her the full 18 months, plus 3 years of probation after release, plus restitution of $87,000 to Michael, plus a permanent criminal record. The judge's words during sentencing stuck with me. Miss Morrison, you are a smart woman who chose to use your intelligence for selfish, cruel purposes. You systematically destroyed your husband's financial life. You lied to multiple courts. You committed fraud on a massive scale, and when confronted with your crimes, you showed no remorse. Only when faced with consequences did you accept responsibility. The court finds that you are a danger to anyone who trusts you, and a prison sentence is necessary to protect the public. Harsh words, but accurate ones. Victoria reported to the Women's Correctional Facility the following month. I didn't think about her much after that. She was no longer my problem, no longer Michael's problem. She was the state's problem now. But the story doesn't quite end there. 6 months into Victoria's sentence, I received a letter. It was from her, written in careful handwriting on prison stationery. Asterisk. Dear Judge Morrison. Asterisk asterisk. I'm writing to you because I don't know who else to write to. My parents won't take my calls. My friends have all abandoned me, and I need someone to know that I'm sorry. Asterisk asterisk. I know you have no reason to believe me. I know I've lied about everything else. But I'm telling the truth now. I'm sorry for what I did to Michael. I'm sorry for hitting you. I'm sorry for the fraud and the lies. And all of it. Asterisk. Asterisk. I've had a lot of time to think in here. To really look at myself and what I've become. And I don't like what I see. I turned into someone I don't recognize. Someone who hurt people for money. Someone who treated marriage like a business transaction. Asterisk. Asterisk. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better. Asterisk. Asterisk. Sincerely, asterisk. Asterisk. Victoria Times, I read the letter 3 times. Tried to figure out if it was genuine or just another manipulation. Another con. Another attempt to play on someone's sympathy. But something about it felt real. Maybe it was the lack of excuses. Maybe it was the simple admission of wrongdoing without trying to minimize it. Maybe it was just wishful thinking on my part. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't owe Victoria anything. But I didn't throw it away either. I kept it. Filed it away in my desk drawer. A reminder that people are capable of change, even people who've done terrible things. Michael, meanwhile, was rebuilding his life. He'd moved back into his house, started dating again. Met a woman named Sarah, who worked as a teacher. She was kind, genuine, and had no interest in Michael's money. They took things slow, built a real relationship based on trust and respect. A year after Victoria's sentencing, Michael called me. Mom, I have some news. Sarah and I are getting engaged. My heart clenched. Not with fear this time, with joy. Because I'd met Sarah multiple times, and she was everything Victoria wasn't. Honest, caring, real. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you. I know you were worried. After Victoria, I was worried. But Sarah is different. Anyone can see that. She wants to meet you properly. Have dinner. Get to know you better. I would love that. We had dinner the following week, Sarah and Michael and me, at a quiet restaurant downtown. And we talked, really talked, about their plans, their hopes, their relationship. At one point, Sarah said something that struck me. Judge Morrison, I want you to know that I understand you might be protective of Michael after what happened with Victoria, and I respect that. I'm not here to replace anyone or to compete with anyone. I'm just here to love your son. And I hope that over time, you'll see that I'm genuine. I already see it, I said. And please, call me Patricia, she smiled. A real smile. Not the calculated, manipulative smile Victoria used to give. A genuine expression of happiness. Thank you, Patricia. That means the world to me. Michael looked at both of us with this expression of contentment, like he'd finally found what he'd been looking for, like he was finally happy. And I realized something important. Victoria hadn't just taken Michael's money. She'd taken his ability to trust. His ability to believe that people could love him for who he was rather than what he had. She'd damaged something fundamental in him, but Sarah was helping him heal, was showing him that real love existed, that not everyone was out to manipulate him, that he deserved happiness. The wedding was small, intimate, just family and close friends. Nothing like the extravagant show Victoria had insisted on. This was real. This was meaningful. I walked Michael down the aisle. His father had passed away years ago, so the honor fell to me. As we walked, he whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for saving me, for believing in me, for fighting for me. Always." I whispered back, "That's what family does." Sarah's vows made everyone cry. She talked about trust and healing and building a life together. About being partners in every sense of the word. About loving Michael, not despite his past, but including his past, because it made him who he was. Michael's vows were equally moving. He talked about finding real love after believing it didn't exist, about learning to trust again, about being grateful for second chances. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. At the reception, Sarah pulled me aside. "Patricia, I need to tell you something. Michael told me everything about Victoria, about the fraud, about the divorce, about what you did to help him. And I want you to know that I think you're incredible. The way you fought for your son, the way you used your knowledge to get justice. That's the kind of mother I hope to be someday." "You'll be a wonderful mother," I said. "I can already tell." "I hope so. And I hope our children will have a grandmother like you. Strong, fierce, protective. I'd be honored." A year later, Sarah and Michael announced they were expecting a boy. They named him James, after Sarah's father. And when I held my grandson for the first time, I thought about how different this moment was from what it could have been. If Victoria had succeeded, Michael would be broken, unable to trust anyone, unable to build a real life, unable to experience this joy. But because I fought back, because I used my knowledge and my position to ensure justice, Michael got his second chance, got his real love, got his family. Victoria served her, full 18 months. I heard she was released on good behavior, heard she moved to another state, started over with a new name. I don't know what happened to her after that. Don't particularly care. Some people might say I was too harsh, that I used my position inappropriately, that a judge shouldn't get personally involved in their child's legal battles. To those people, I say this: I followed every ethical rule. I recused myself from Michael's case. I didn't preside over any hearings involving Victoria. I simply compiled evidence and helped my son find a good attorney. Everything I did was legal and ethical. But more than that, I was a mother protecting her child. Victoria committed crimes, real, prosecutable crimes. She would have been caught eventually. I just made sure it happened sooner rather than later, and I don't regret any of it. 5 years have passed now. Michael and Sarah have 3 children. James is 4, Emma is 2, and baby Charlotte just turned 6 months old. They're happy, genuinely happy. The kind of happiness that comes from a relationship built on honesty and trust. Michael's career has flourished. He got promoted twice, makes more money than he did before Victoria, has rebuilt his savings, bought a bigger house for his growing family, and his relationship with me is stronger than ever. We have dinner every Sunday. I babysit the kids once a week. I'm part of their lives in a real, meaningful way. Sarah treats me like her own mother, calls me for advice, includes me in family decisions, makes me feel valued and loved. It's everything I hoped for in a daughter-in-law. Last month, I retired from the bench. After 35 years in law, 15 as an attorney, 20 on the bench, I decided it was time. Time to spend more time with my grandchildren. Time to travel. Time to enjoy life. My colleagues threw me a retirement party at the courthouse. Judges, attorneys, court staff. People I'd worked with for decades. And they said wonderful things about my career, about my fairness, about my integrity, about my dedication to justice. But the moment that meant the most came at the end. Michael stood up and gave a speech. "My mother," he began, "is the strongest person I know. She dedicated her life to ensuring justice for families going through the worst moments of their lives. She was fair, compassionate, and unwavering in her commitment to doing what was right. But more than that, she was all those things for me. When I was going through my own worst moment, she fought for me. She protected me. She ensured justice when the system failed. And I wouldn't be standing here today, happy, healthy, with a beautiful family if it wasn't for her. So, Mom, thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for being my mother. My protector, my advocate, my hero," I cried. Couldn't help it. Because after everything we'd been through, hearing those words from my son meant everything. The party ended late. Michael drove me home. As we pulled up to my house, he said, "Mom, I need to tell you something. Something I've never said before." "What's that?" "I'm glad Victoria showed her true colors when she did. I'm glad the divorce happened, because it led me to Sarah. It led me to the life I have now. And I wouldn't change any of it. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, because they taught me what real love looks like. They taught me what I deserve. They taught me that you don't settle for someone who treats you like an ATM. I'm proud of you," I said, "for not letting what Victoria did make you bitter, for not letting it destroy your ability to trust, for building something beautiful with Sarah. I learned that from you, watching you fight, watching you refuse to let Victoria win, watching you believe that justice was possible even when it seemed impossible. That's what gave me hope." We hugged, a long, tight hug, the kind of hug that says everything words can't. As I walked into my house that night, I thought about the journey, about that moment in the courthouse hallway when Victoria slapped me, about the rage I felt, about the decision I made to fight back. Some people might call it revenge, but it wasn't. It was justice, pure and simple. Victoria committed crimes, and she paid for them. Not because I wanted revenge, but because what she did was wrong and someone needed to hold her accountable. The law exists for a reason, to protect people from those who would harm them, to ensure that wrongdoing has consequences, to provide a path to justice when we've been wronged. I spent my career upholding that law. And when Victoria tried to manipulate it, tried to use it as a weapon against my son, I used every tool at my disposal to ensure justice prevailed. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because that's what mothers do. We protect our children. We fight for them. We ensure they get the justice they deserve. And we don't apologize for it. Victoria. I learned an expensive lesson about fraud, about lies, about thinking you're smarter than everyone else, about hitting a woman in a courthouse and expecting no consequences. And I learned something too. That even after decades on the bench, even after thousands of cases, family law can still surprise you. That the person sitting across from you in a courtroom might be lying. That beautiful smiles can hide ugly intentions. That the system, while imperfect, does work if you know how to use it properly. The years since Victoria have taught me other lessons too. Lessons about forgiveness, about moving forward, about the long-term consequences of our choices. Last year, I received another letter from Victoria. She'd been out of prison for over 3 years by then. The letter came to my home address. I don't know how she got it, but I suspect she looked it up in public records. Asterisk, Dear Judge Morrison. Asterisk, asterisk, I know I have no right to contact you. I know the restraining order, technically, expired after my release. But I respect that you probably never want to hear from me again. I'm writing this letter more for myself than for you. My therapist says it's important to make amends where possible, even if those amends aren't accepted. Asterisk, asterisk, I've been out of prison for 3 years. I've been working as a waitress in Nevada. It's honest work, hard work. The kind of work I used to think I was too good for. I was wrong about a lot of things. Asterisk, asterisk. Prison changed me. Not in the way movies show it, with some dramatic moment of clarity. It was gradual. Talking to other women who'd made terrible choices. Realizing that I wasn't special or different. That I was just another person who'd hurt people for selfish reasons. Asterisk, asterisk. I've been in therapy since my release, trying to understand why I did what I did. Why I thought marriage was a business transaction. Why I thought manipulating people was acceptable. My therapist says I have something called antisocial personality traits. That I lacked. Empathy. That I saw people as objects to be used rather than humans with feelings. Asterisk. Asterisk. I'm working on that. It's hard. Empathy doesn't come naturally to me. But I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying to think about how my actions affect others. To consider their feelings. To be a better person than I was. Asterisk, asterisk. I know Michael has remarried. I know he has children. I'm happy for him. Genuinely happy. He deserves all the happiness I denied him. He deserves a partner who actually loves him instead of seeing him as a paycheck. Asterisk, asterisk. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for contact. I don't deserve that either. I'm just asking that you know I'm sorry, that I understand what I did was unforgivable, that I'm spending every day trying to be someone better than the person who hurt your family. Asterisk, asterisk. I've paid back the restitution, all $87,000. It took 3 years of living in a studio apartment and working double shifts, but I paid every penny. It was the least I could do. The very least. Asterisk, asterisk. I hope you're well. I hope Michael is well. I hope his children grow up in a home filled with love and honesty. Everything I failed to provide. Asterisk, asterisk. With sincere regret. Asterisk, asterisk. Victoria Times. I read the letter sitting at my kitchen table with my morning coffee. Read it 3 times. Tried to determine if it was genuine or just another manipulation. Another attempt to worm her way back into our lives. But something about it felt different. The acknowledgement of her personality disorder. The admission that empathy was hard for her. The recognition that she might never be forgiven. These weren't things the old Victoria would have admitted. I showed the letter to Michael when he came over for Sunday dinner that week. He read it silently, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think she's trying," he said finally. "I think she's trying to be better. Whether she succeeds or not, I don't know. But at least she's trying. Do you forgive her?" He thought about it for a long moment. "No, not yet. Maybe not ever, but I don't hate her anymore either. I feel nothing when I think about her. And that's probably the best I can offer." "That's fair. What about you? Do you forgive her?" I considered the question. Did I forgive Victoria for what she'd done to Michael? For the slap? For the lies and manipulation? "I forgive her for the slap," I said. "That was impulsive. Stupid. But it was a moment of poor judgment, not a calculated attack. The rest? The fraud, the lies, the systematic destruction of your finances? That's harder. That took planning. That took deliberate cruelty. But you don't hate her either." "No, I don't hate her. Hate takes energy. And I'd rather spend my energy on loving my family than hating someone who's already paid for their crimes." Michael nodded. "That's healthier than how I felt for a long time. I hated her so much after the divorce. It was eating me alive. But then I met Sarah, and suddenly there was something better to focus on. Someone who showed me what real love looked like, and the hate just faded away. Love does that. It crowds out the negative emotions, makes room for something better." Sarah came into the kitchen then, carrying baby Charlotte. "What are we talking about so seriously?" "Victoria sent Mom a letter," Michael said. Sarah's expression shifted. Not to anger, exactly, more like concern. "Is she trying to make contact?" "No," I said. "Just apologizing, letting us know she's changed. Or trying to change, anyway." "Do you believe her?" "I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter?" Sarah thought about it. "I guess not. Whether she's changed or not doesn't affect us. We've moved on. Built a life. She's not part of it anymore." "Exactly," Michael said. "She's just a character in a story we tell sometimes. A cautionary tale, but not someone who has any power over us anymore." I realized he was right. Victoria had been stripped of all her power, not just by the power courts, not just by the prison sentence, but by our collective decision to move forward, to build lives that didn't include her, to find happiness despite what she'd done. That was the real victory. Not the court ruling, not the prison sentence, but the life Michael built after Victoria, the happiness he found, the family he created. Victoria could send 1,000 apology letters, and it wouldn't change what mattered. Michael was happy. Michael was loved. Michael was whole. 2 months after receiving Victoria's letter, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Daniel Cross, Victoria's former attorney, the man who'd presented false testimony and been sanctioned by Judge Harrison. He saw me and immediately looked uncomfortable. Started to turn away, probably hoping to avoid an awkward encounter. But I called out to him, "Daniel, wait." He stopped, turned reluctantly. "Judge Morrison, hello. How are you?" "I'm managing. Working on rebuilding my practice after the bar. Sanctions. It's been difficult. I imagine it has been. Look, I need to say something. I need to apologize for my role in what happened with your son's case. I should have known Victoria was lying. Should have done my due diligence. Should have refused to present testimony I couldn't verify. I let my desire to win override my ethical obligations." I studied him. He looked older, worn down. The sanctions had clearly taken a toll. "Why did you do it?" I asked. "You were a good attorney. You had a solid reputation. Why risk it all for Victoria's case?" He sighed. "Honestly, money. She paid well, very well. And I convinced myself that every client deserves vigorous representation, that it wasn't my job to judge whether she was telling the truth, that the system would sort it out. But the system doesn't always sort it out. Sometimes lies win. Sometimes good people lose because their opponent played dirty and their attorney helped. I know that now. I learned it the hard way. The bar suspended me for 6 months. I lost half my clients. My reputation was destroyed. All because I prioritized money over ethics. Good. He looked surprised. Good? Yes. Good. You needed to learn that lesson. Attorneys have a responsibility to the system, not just to their clients. When you present false testimony, when you help someone commit fraud on the court, you damage the entire legal system. You make it harder for honest people to get justice. I understand that now. Do you? Because understanding something intellectually and actually changing your behavior are two different things. I've changed. I promise you, I've changed. I've turned down 3 cases in the last year because the clients wanted me to push the ethical boundaries. I won't do it anymore. I can't. I saw what it cost me, what it cost Michael. What it almost cost my entire career. I nodded. Then maybe the sanctions did what they were supposed to do. Maybe you're a better attorney now because of them. I hope so. I'm trying to be. We parted ways after that. And I thought about how Victoria's case had ripple effects beyond just Michael. Daniel Cross learned a lesson about ethics. Judge Harrison became more skeptical of sob stories from attractive witnesses. The courthouse staff became more vigilant about assault in the building. One person's bad behavior had consequences that spread wider than anyone expected. But those consequences led to positive changes, to people being more careful, more ethical, more honest. Maybe that was Victoria's real legacy. Not the fraud and the lies, but the reforms that came after. The lessons learned, the changes made to prevent the next Victoria from succeeding. On what would have been Victoria and Michael's 10th wedding anniversary if they'd stayed married, Sarah organized a family celebration. Not to commemorate the failed marriage, but to celebrate how far they'd come since then. 10 years ago, Michael was married to the Ramiriadam. Wrong person, Sarah said during dinner. Today, he's married to me. And I know that sounds arrogant, but I'm the right person. I love him. I respect him. I build him up instead of tearing him down, and I want to celebrate that. Hear, hear, I said, raising my glass. Michael looked at Sarah with such love. 10 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd made an unfixable mistake. I thought I'd never trust anyone again. But then I met you, and you showed me that love could be real. That marriage could be a partnership instead of a con. That I deserved happiness. You did deserve happiness, Sarah said. You always did. Victoria just convinced you otherwise. She convinced me of a lot of lies. That I wasn't good enough. That I should be grateful anyone wanted to marry me. That I was lucky to have her despite how she treated me. Emotional abuse, I said. That's what it was. Financial abuse and emotional abuse wrapped up in a pretty package. I see that now. For a long time, I blamed myself. Thought maybe if I'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have cheated, wouldn't have stolen from me, wouldn't have lied. But that was never true. Nothing I could have done would have changed who she was. Exactly, Sarah said. Her behavior was about her character, not your worth. You were always worthy of love. She just wasn't capable of giving it. Later that evening, after the kids were in bed and Sarah was cleaning up, Michael and I sat on his back porch. The same porch where we'd had so many difficult conversations during the divorce, where he'd cried about losing everything, where I'd promised him we'd fight back. Do you remember sitting here after the first court hearing? Michael asked. When Judge Harrison ruled in Victoria's favor? I remember. You were devastated. I thought it was over, thought I'd lost. Thought there was no coming back from it. But there was, because you fought for me. Because you knew the law. Because you wouldn't accept an unjust ruling. I did what any mother would do. No, Michael said firmly. No, Most mothers couldn't have done what you did. Most mothers don't have your knowledge of the law, your connections, your understanding of the system. I was lucky. So lucky that my mother happened to be a judge who knew exactly how to fight back. You would have found another way, I said. You would have survived, maybe. But I wouldn't have won. Not like this. Not with everything returned. Not with justice actually served. Victoria would have taken everything and faced no consequences. And I would have spent the rest of my life bitter and broken. But you're not bitter and broken. No. I'm happy. I have a wife I love, 3 beautiful children, a career I'm proud of, a life that feels meaningful. And I have you, still in my life, still part of my family, still my mother and my hero. I teared up, couldn't help it. Being your mother has been the greatest honor of my life. And fighting for you? That wasn't a burden. That was a privilege. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crickets, watching the stars, enjoying the peace that comes from having survived something difficult and come out stronger. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think Victoria will ever be truly happy? Like, genuinely happy? Not the fake happiness she performed when we were married, but real contentment? I don't know. Happiness requires empathy. It requires the ability to connect with others authentically. If Victoria really does have antisocial personality traits like she said in her letter, that might always be difficult for her. That's sad. It is. But it's also not our responsibility. We can't fix Victoria. We can only control our own lives, our own choices, our own happiness. I know. And I'm not trying to fix her. I just wonder sometimes if she's capable of change. If people like her can ever really become different. Some can, with a lot of therapy and genuine desire to change. Others can't. They're too damaged or too unwilling to do the work. I don't know which category Victoria falls into. And honestly, it doesn't matter. She's not our concern anymore. You're right. She's not. Sarah came out then, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Thought you two might want these. It's getting chilly. Michael pulled Sarah down onto his lap. She laughed and wrapped her arms around his neck. They looked at each other with such genuine affection. Such real love. That was what Victoria had never been able to give him. That authentic connection. That feeling of being truly known and loved anyway. That partnership built on honesty and trust. I looked at them and felt profound gratitude. Gratitude that Michael had survived Victoria. Gratitude that he'd found Sarah. Gratitude that I'd been able to help him fight back. Gratitude that justice had prevailed. Now, sitting in my retirement, reflecting on my career and my life, the Victoria case stands out. Not because it was the most complex case I ever worked on. Not because it was the most important legally, but because it was personal. For 35 years, I sat on the bench and rendered judgment on other people's families, other people's marriages, other people's pain. I tried to be fair, tried to follow the law, tried to give everyone a chance at justice. But when it was my own family, when it was my son being destroyed by a manipulative woman, I didn't just render judgment from behind a bench. I got involved. I fought. I used every tool at my disposal to ensure justice. Some might say that was inappropriate, that judges should maintain distance and objectivity, that I shouldn't have gotten involved in Michael's case, even indirectly. To those people, I say this: I'm a mother first, a judge second. And while I followed every ethical rule, while I didn't preside over any of Michael's hearings, I wasn't going to sit back and watch my son be destroyed. The system worked because I knew how to use it properly, because I understood the law, because I compiled evidence correctly and helped Michael find an excellent attorney. Everything I did was legal and ethical, but it was also personal, and I'm not sorry for that. The law exists to protect people, to ensure justice, to hold wrongdoers accountable. And that's exactly what happened. Victoria committed crimes. She was prosecuted. She was punished. She paid restitution. The system worked. Not perfectly, no system is perfect. But it worked well enough that an innocent man got his life back, and a guilty woman faced consequences for her actions. That's all any of us can ask for. Justice. Real, meaningful justice. And sometimes, justice needs a little help from someone who knows the law inside and out, someone who won't quit, someone who believes that right should prevail over wrong, someone like a mother protecting her child. Last week, on my 60th birthday, my family threw me a party. Michael and Sarah and the kids, my sister and her family, old colleagues from the courthouse, friends from book club and yoga and various other parts of my life. Michael gave a speech. He talked about me being his mother, his advocate, his hero. He talked about the Victoria case without naming her, just referring to difficult times and legal challenges. He talked about how I'd taught him to fight for what's right, to never give up, to believe that justice is possible even when it seems impossible. And he ended with this. My mother taught me that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up. It's about fighting when you've been knocked down. It's about refusing to let other people's cruelty define your life. And that's the most valuable lesson anyone ever taught me. Everyone applauded. Sarah was crying. The kids were confused about why everyone was emotional but clapped anyway because the adults were. And I realized that the Victoria case, as awful as it was, had taught all of us important lessons. It taught Michael about resilience. It taught me about the importance of fighting for family. It taught Sarah about forgiveness and moving forward. It taught Daniel Cross about ethics. It maybe even taught Victoria about consequences and change. Bad things happen. People hurt each other. The system doesn't always work the way it should. But sometimes, if you're knowledgeable and persistent and willing to fight, justice does prevail. Victoria tried to destroy my son. She failed. Not just because I fought back, but because Michael was stronger than she expected, because he built a life after her, because he found real love, because he refused to stay broken. That's the real story. Not the legal battle, not the court hearings, not the fraud charges, or the prison sentence. The real story is about a man who survived someone trying to destroy him and came out stronger. About a mother who protected her child. About a family that stuck together through difficult times. About justice prevailing in the end. And about a woman named Victoria who learned that actions have consequences. That you can't hit a judge and expect no repercussions. That fraud catches up with you. That lying under oath has serious penalties. She learned those lessons the hard way. In a courtroom. In a prison cell. In years of therapy and minimum wage jobs and trying to rebuild a life after destroying her own. I don't take pleasure in her suffering. But I don't regret my role in ensuring she faced consequences either. Justice isn't always pleasant. Sometimes it's harsh, sometimes it hurts, but it's necessary. Because without consequences, without accountability, without people standing up and saying, this is wrong, and it stops now, there's no society, there's no trust. There's just chaos and people hurting each other without consequence. So yes, I fought back when Victoria hit me. Yes, I used my knowledge of the law to ensure justice. Yes, I helped destroy her in court, and I'd do it again. Because that's what mothers do. We protect our children. We fight for them. We ensure they get justice. Always. Subscribe for more stories like this.